It's time to start your morning by taking 5. Here's your host, Matt McMaster.
You're listening to Take 5, a quick 5-minute take on the biggest things happening in Nebraska sports. I am your host, Matt McMaster, and today we are talking about Nebraska football and their unfortunate loss to the Minnesota Golden Gophers in Minneapolis on Friday. Let's just cut to the chase. It was terrible. Losing to Minnesota already is bad enough. They have not had a good year. Let's just be frank about it. They lost to Cal. That was not a good loss. They got their butts whooped to Ohio State. It's Ohio State, but still they lost 45-3. They barely snuck out with a victory against Purdue, and they took a lot for them to beat Rutgers. And so this was a Minnesota team that hadn't played nearly as good of football as Nebraska had heading into this game. And yet not only did Nebraska lose, which is bad enough to begin with, if we're being honest. I think that this was the best opportunity that Nebraska has had to finally beat P.J. Fleck and Minnesota on the road, but they lost in absolutely terrible fashion. I think that goes without saying. Anybody who's clicking on this video probably knows that the result of the game and that it was embarrassing how much just Nebraska got pushed around on both sides of the ball and were just unable to do anything that had made them successful heading into the game. But I've struggled with this a little bit because I've been very critical of how they played against Minnesota. They played bad. I don't think there's really there's no silver lining as to what happened against Minnesota. Yeah, maybe Luke Lindemeyer played well and Archie Wilson and Kyle Cunanan, they played well too. But outside of 3 players having decent games, just everything top to bottom was just an absolute disaster. Filling the gaps in the run game, especially from the secondary, terrible again. Bad penalties in the secondary when they needed to get crucial stops. The defensive line, once again, gets run over. The middle linebackers get eaten up by blocks. On the offensive end, the O-line gives up 9 sacks. Dylan Raiola holds the ball for over 3 seconds every time he got it. It just... The run game seemed like it was finally moving in the right direction, and yet the play calling decided to absolutely veer away from that and run the ball 16 times compared to throwing it 38 times against Minnesota. Nothing well really occurred from the players to the coaches to the game plan to the execution. It was not good, and so I think it's incredibly easy to look at this game and say, wow, Nebraska's, it's going to be hard for them to beat Northwestern, hard for them to beat UCLA, hard for them to beat Penn State on the road. Same thing with USC and Iowa. And I do want to say this. They played terribly, and they deserve, to have the discourse that we are having about them. They deserve to hear that these are the mistakes that they made, and this is why it's so concerning. At the same time, I will venture into this kind of thought process. They're the youngest team in the Big Ten. They won an emotional game against Michigan State, followed up by an emotional road win against Maryland that took everything they got in both of those games. And then on a short week, had to travel to Minnesota to play a team that has had their number in a place that they have not been able to win. In a week where a lot of people were talking about them. And not only just from the whole Matt Rule Penn State saga, but from the, hey, wow, this team is 5-1 and will be favored in almost every single game down the stretch. They could be a potential playoff team. And they were unable to hand that. And I think it was in part because of their youth and experience. And these are kind of, I think, experiences that you have to go through if you're going to grow into a better team. And so saying all of that, I'm not making excuses, but I do think that those factors, to me, influenced me to believe that, hey, maybe this was just a bad game. That they had a stinker, they had a terrible performance. This isn't who they are, and that they could come out and they could play closer to what they've been in the past, and which, by the way, they still are a 5-2 football team. And so that's where I'm bordering right now. And I think this is what this week is all about, right? Trying to find out, was that who they are really, or was that just a one-off? And to me, I think of just all of these factors and everything I've seen before. I'm veering more toward believing that this was just a bad game against a team that was not the greatest matchup for them in terms of Darius Taylor being back from injury, their ability to run the ball, and how they've attacked Nebraska in the past. And so after this game, immediately people start to think, all right, what does this mean for the rest of the season? You went from maybe being a dark horse team to, man, 7-5 is on the table. To me, the ceiling is 8-4. I still think they can go 8-4. I still think they can have a good year. And end this season in a pretty decent bowl game. I still believe that Dylan Raiola, despite his terrible performance against Minnesota, has shown enough that if they plan the game around him properly, that he'll be able to go out and execute and play similar to what he looked like against Michigan and Cincinnati. I think that Emmett Johnson looks incredible. He looks so fast. He looks incredibly shifty. He looks the best he ever has in his career. And I think that Daniel Holgorsen, like he did before, is going to learn from his lesson and realize that, hey, I should run the ball more. I should call more run plays. I think that this defensive secondary with a lot of leadership is going to try and take control of the defense and try and alleviate some pressure from both the linebackers and the defensive line. So I think that this team has good culture. And I think that Matt Rule is a good culture builder. I believe that. I believe that since the beginning when he got here in his first year in 2023. I believe that about this program under Matt Rule. They have good culture. They'll be able to prove it. If they go out and they beat Northwestern and they look good doing it and they look fast and motivated and hungry to begin the game, I think that's exactly what you need to know about this team. And look, I want to venture back to when they lost to UCLA. That, in retrospect, really gave them a kick in the butt to do some of the positive things that happened after that. I think that I think that this game has the same exact potential. So I expect them to go out and to win against Northwestern, to play well against Northwestern, to prove that, hey, what happened in Minneapolis is one-off. The short week got to us. The road trips got to us. Our youth and inexperience got to us. Yes, there are some problems that we have. We're not a perfect team. We're not a great team, but we are a good one, and we can work around them. We can beat teams that we're supposed to beat. And Northwestern, as them being a 7.5-point favorite, is a team that they should beat. So my floor for this team is 7-5. My ceiling is 8-4. I don't see them going 4-1 down the stretch. I think that would be incredible, but also difficult with just the road trips that they have and some of the opponents they play. But I think this team, my preseason prediction is 8-4. Even after the Minnesota game, I still believe that this is an 8-4 football team and that there's enough good and there needs to be the right guidance and coaching to expose the good and try and minimize some of the bad that we've seen, which they've had throughout the entirety of the year. Alrighty, I've been Matt McMaster, and that's been Take 5.